Welcome back to The Ethical Entrepreneur, a free speaker series that gives you access to 21 speakers in ethical and sustainable business practices. I'm Monica Timmers, and I'm loving sharing all of the insights and experience of our lovely speakers who have so freely given their time and expertise to help you build the business of your dreams. Today, I'm speaking with David Upton about the alignment of social and capital purpose. David is CEO of Common Good Solutions, a consultancy that helps individuals and purpose-led businesses start, grow, and make meaningful impact. David's vision is to see every business enrich its local community and the lives of its customers and employees. David is also CEO of Social Enterprise Institute, an online learning platform delivering social enterprise training globally, and founding vice president of the Social Enterprise Network of Nova Scotia. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
So I mentioned earlier that we were talking about things that historically have probably been polar opposites, really since the industrial revolution, and that is social versus capital. But your view is that the two are aligning, right? What is social and capital confluence, and how is it changing the world?
Well, I think it's too soon to say that, to make a comment on how it's changing the world. I mean, I think its potential to change the world is enormous. I think if we think about the things we've seen on the news just over the past year, whether it's about Black Lives Matter or Indigenous lives, First Nations lives in Canada, which is where I'm from, or the current situation in Myanmar, there's a growing awareness that the world is inequitable, and that some of the source of the problems that we have comes from the way that capital is arranged. Now, I've been very fortunate in my life, and we live a life of relative privilege, for sure, as compared to many people in the world. But the truth is that so much of the decisions that are made are driven by a need for a return. So if you think about the way in the 18th century, when business was really sort of starting to become a thing, and the Industrial Revolution, those kinds of things, or it was about returns, and then in the 19th century, it got to be about returns and reporting, or accounting, if you'd like. And I think that as money and the value of money, as the approaches become more sophisticated, and as the consumers of those products become more sophisticated, there's this growing awareness that money has to act on all of our behalfs. I mean, money and the exchange of money, it's really a social construct. It's like Facebook for dollars, if you want. Like it's really like we don't know each other very well, but if you were going to buy my car, or if you wanted my car, I would expect that you would probably pay me for it. And it's a social engagement, if you want. It's transactional, but still a social engagement. And money was designed as a way of making it easier than you saying, look, I have two pigs in a coat, or two pigs in a goat, and I would like to get that horse and cart from you. And I might say, I've already got two pigs. If you can get rid of your pigs and get me a small horse, like money just leveled all those things out. So what we're realizing right now is that money has the power to change things in the world just by virtue of us using it. And a perfect example would be if my brother-in-law was a roofer and he owed me a couple of $1,000, and I needed to get the roof done on my house because the shingles were bad and it needed to be replaced. Do you suppose I would put it out to a tender, and if some person came in and offered to do the roof for $10 less than my brother-in-law, that I would give it to that person? Or would I probably hire my brother-in-law to do the roof, knowing that I get my $2,000 back? in value. I get the roof plus the $2,000 that he already owes me.
Yeah.
So if you think about the way corporations or governments procure, as an example of money being used, if in Nova Scotia we have a lot of trees, and there's this organization who were making I don't know if they do this in the rest of the world, but when we're making roads here, we have little stakes that grow in the ground and they paint the tops orange so they can so the surveyors can make sure that everything is level, I guess. I'm hardly a road builder. So those stakes are made by, so in Nova Scotia, they buy something like $60,000 a year of these little wooden stakes. So if I went to a sawmill, just a regular old sawmill, and had to make $60,000 worth of wooden stakes, I'd get them all on a couple of tractor trailers 2 days later, and it'd be done. If I went to a workshop where people who were working there were intellectually challenged, and they were working with wood, I could actually pay them a wage to do that work. Now, those people, at least in Canada, would already be on some kind of support from the government. So we move those people, so the government, with their $60,000, might create 2 jobs for people for 6 months. So they'd each make $15,000. So they'd earn $15,000. The government would they would get their $60,000 worth of wooden stakes, but they would reduce their costs by $4,000. So the $60,000 worth of stakes would actually cost the government $54,000. 2 people would have a livelihood who didn't otherwise have one, and we haven't spent any more money. Yeah. So there's a really, really simple, admittedly very simple example of how money can be used to influence social outcomes. And so if you start to multiply that across the billions and billions of dollars, pounds, lira, pick a currency that governments spend on purchasing, imagine the impact that could have on our most marginalized and needy people, citizens, all without raising $1 in tax, without spending any more money, just by doing the right thing. In the same way that I would support my brother-in-law on a personal level, rather than someone from down the road. So those are very simple examples, but I think that they ring true on a broader scale.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's interesting you say, capital initially was a social construct. It's all part of the same thing, isn't it?
Sure. I think it is the same. And I think there's a growing realization as consumers and as a business owner, I think technology and television, honest to God, this year has made us hyper aware of how corporations and municipal and government entities behave, because it's hard to misbehave and not be caught out.
Yeah.
So with all of that in our face all the time, it used to be a lot easier to pretend that I didn't know what some of my fellow citizens' problems were, because I didn't have those problems in my home, and they weren't shoved in front of me by seeing it in someone else's home. It was easy for me to feel a little bit as though it weren't my problem. Mm-hmm. I really believe, I know it to be true, that increasingly people, especially younger people, are going, you know what? This is wrong. This is incredibly wrong to stand and watch. If you can't be part of the solution, then you must be part of the problem. So we have to, as a civilization, as if we want to outlive cockroaches in the ecosystem, we need to behave far better than we're behaving right now. And I think that corporations are realizing that they can do a lot to make themselves look like better and more responsible citizens by investing in the people who work for them, by acknowledging and taking care of the people who purchase their products, by paying homage to the communities in which they operate, and by taking care of the planet, because most of those people hopefully I believe, have children and grandchildren who they would like to see, live decent lives. So it's such a compelling and easy argument to make. I feel like I'm singing to the choir or preaching to the converted.
Likely with this audience, you are.
Yeah. So you can all turn it off now. You know the story.
So let's talk about some of the businesses that are already doing that, because it's quite often quite easy to view the challenges ahead as too insurmountable. But you're a pioneer of social enterprises, and I know that you've witnessed or been part of some incredible social change. So can you share a few examples with us and what you believe it took to make that happen?
Sure. There's a company in Cape Breton, which is part of Nova Scotia, which, if you've never been to Nova Scotia, it is a beautiful, stunningly fabulous place. Cape Breton, what they used to call industrial Cape Breton, it was like the north of England. It had coal mines, had steel plants, and it had those things for a generation. But the coal ran out. The steel, of course, couldn't be made because they didn't have the coal. And about 40 years ago, truly the economy cratered. And there were no jobs. And there were just jobs of any kind. And so this company started in 1979, a social business called New Dawn Enterprises. And they were something really unusual at the time. They were, in this country, they were called a company by guarantee. So most, or a corporation limited by guarantee. So most corporations are limited by share. Mm-hmm. So if I own shares in the company, then I get to control, excuse me, how the company spends its money and how it disperses its surpluses. If a company is limited by guarantee, it's a guarantee that the directors of the company are going to use the money to serve the stated mission of the organization. So they started this company to create employment opportunities for those many miners and steel workers who had been displaced. And they're at the point today where they have, I think, 300 employees. They do enormously valuable community work. They create meals for families. They provide housing and community. They invest in cultural organizations. They are really a force of economic growth in that place. And they came out of a wish and a willingness to do better. Right. There's another organization that I've admired for a long time called Mondragon. Mondragon is a cooperative. It was started in the Basque region of Spain. And so I'm not as familiar with the story as I might be about New Dawn. We actually have offices at New Dawn in Cape Breton. But Mondragon started to employ, so it was a worker-owned cooperative. It started to employ Basque residents who had been unemployed. The Spanish economy had cratered a long time ago. And they're now a multi-billion-dollar business that does work all over the world and invests its money back into the people who work inside the businesses to a large degree. So there's these kind of like one-offs here and one-offs there. But what I'm seeing now, and I think what's most exciting, is I talk to a lot of young people. We have a lot of young people work in this place. I'm just stuck in a corner office, so nobody would disrupt us, but or hopefully no one would disrupt us. There's a growing awareness that the businesses that people run it's not enough to make money. You have to be able to add value beyond the financial contribution. And if you think about the first companies that were chartered, and this is probably a little bit of an off example, but it is true. The first companies chartered were like the Hudson's Bay Company and the one that they did in India, the West Indian Tea Company, or wherever that one trading company. I can't remember the exact name, but they were chartered by the Crown, and on the condition that a significant portion of their surplus would be reinvested back into the state. And so that was the origins of corporations. And so somewhere between 1606 or whenever the hell that was, I don't care when it was, and today, there's been this gradual erosion of the contribution back to the point where many corporations pay no taxes or low taxes, and often leave the public to mitigate the challenges of their pollution or whatever like that. So I think the world's changing. I think young people see it changing and are intent on it changing, and that we're truly moving into a time where it's going to be better. And I think our current problem with the pandemic has exacerbated and highlighted those challenges, so that increasingly we have more time to think about what represents quality of life, how that impacts on our day-to-day. I was talking to a young woman who works with the government of Canada yesterday, who I've known for a number of years, very, very bright, quite ambitious. She's moved out of Ottawa, which is our capital, to Haliburton, which is a small town in the Muskoka part of Ontario, to be closer to her family. And during this pandemic, she and her husband, her partner, have decided to start a family. They're doing all these kinds of things. And she said, you know, a year and a half ago, I was really trying to figure out how we were going to get the cash together to buy a condo downtown in Toronto. And now my life has become much simpler. The things that are important to me now have changed substantially. And I think that's a story that you hear over and over again. So money and the use of money is going to have to be tailored to the needs of that consumer market, and not the one that I grew up in. And when you hear companies like BlackRock announce it, which is a $1 trillion investment fund, multi-trillion dollar investment fund, announce that they're going to require, and I don't want to be anyone to misconstrue that I think BlackRock is a potential savior to the world's climate. I don't think it is. But even they're acknowledging that the businesses in which they're going to invest have to have and be able to demonstrate that they're creating some kind of social environmental change. If they can't, they're not going to invest anymore. Well, these are harbingers of change that are enormous.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it sounds like we need to go back to our roots, to go back to the core purpose of business, which was to serve others and to contribute to the community, right?
I have been convinced of that for 30 years. So yes, I think it's really the way. I think that there's a when we talk about scale, we used to talk about scaling up, in a corporate sense. And scaling up always meant, in my mind, it was this picture of a rocket and a guy strapped to the rocket with a cigar and a tie, kind of thing, like whee, and it would go as fast and as high as we can, as fast as we can. What I think we're now thinking about, so I could have always imagined that scale thing being under as bright a light, a 500 watt light on a stage, and that if you were in the middle of the light, you were right in the center of the wind, and the further you went to the side of the light, the dimmer the light became, until you could walk out of the light altogether. I think when we think about scale today, we need to think about it in terms of scaling out. And so if you imagine 500 watt bulbs stretched over a much larger space, you get this kind of sense of the economy hasn't changed. Well, maybe it's changed for those people at the very, very top a little bit, but it hasn't changed substantively for most of the world's population, except that it's become more inclusive and there's more light shone in more places. And I think the confluence of social value and investment and capital is what's going to make that possible.
Completely agree. I love that visual, actually, scaling out, not up. Love that.
Yeah.
So, with companies like BlackRock stating what they have, we're obviously on this wave. It's heading in the right direction, but what more do we need to be doing, and what does the future look like if we were to accelerate it now?
I get asked that question often, and I'm always in the back of my mind a little embarrassed to be trying to answer it. You might be able to tell but I don't dye my beard. It's actually this color. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's gray. And so the thing is that it's always a little bit odd to be asked about the future when you have a looming best before date, sort of career-wise. But I think when I talk to my sons and my daughters and who are adults, and I think and watch the way that they're trying to build their lives, it makes me optimistic. I think that people who have given millennials a bad rap have missed what's really going on. Mm-hmm. And I mean, and like every generation, I'm sure I'm positive there's a good portion of them that are just, not going to be all that we'd hope they would be. But I'm of the belief that they are the brightest and the most progressive and the most sincere in wanting to make some of these changes that I've, in small ways tried to contribute to over the last number of years. And I don't think they're going to be swayed. And I don't think they're going to be swayed because there are too many of them. And there are too many of them who have been told all of their lives that they're right and that they're going to be a success and that they're going to get it right. When I started out working as a young guy, there was no end of bosses who could tell me how far from right I was, and you didn't get a hand up, you more got a hand up side of the head kind of approach. It was more, I mean, not maybe literally, but certainly it was more like that than it was today. So these young people who have been told all of their lives that they are special, that they can be what they want to be, are damn well going to be who they say they want to be. And I think more than anything, that gives me hope. So for all of us boomer parents who might feel as though we could have done a much better job with our children, at least for our own mental sanity, we did do a really good job with our children. And I think we've created a generation, or at least contributed to the creation of a generation that is not going to be satisfied to just get a home and a mortgage and retire after 40 years of working their asses off. And so all of those things encourage me. If I had a fear, it's that the gap between the privilege that some of these young people have lived, have benefited from, and the lack of opportunity that exists in so many other places is a big bridge that still has to be to be sort of managed. And that's probably the one sort of cloud I see, significant cloud I see on the horizon, is how do we get people? So what's that story? Just because you're on third base, a baseball joke, just because you're on third base doesn't mean you hit a triple. And so we need to find ways to tell people who are still standing there in the batter's box looking at it going, wow, they've never let me bat before. How do we get those guys a turn at the plate? Wow, I'm filled with something. The truth is we need to find ways to make sure there are real opportunities to make space for people who might look or see things differently or feel things differently than we do. Because even our bright young millennials aren't right about everything. So this is kind of like, I think there's still a whole sort of melting that has to go on. People have to better understand each other's situations. And, it's not about having a second car.
Okay.
Anyway, that's...
I think the color of your beard actually gives you a lot of credibility to talk about the future, because you've been such, a big part of the path and the past and the growth of social enterprises, and hopefully the pace of change on that is exponential. I'm certainly optimistic about it too.
Yeah.
So if any of our audience are thinking about starting a social enterprise, what kind of support is out there for them? How do they access insights and know-how and capital? Because like you said, they may have a fabulous idea. They may think they know how to get there, but there are people with experience in this that will help them, avoid some of the pitfalls that they may not be aware of.
Sure. Well, there's a few places that you can, there's many places that you can go. We work with fabulous organizations like Akina in New Zealand, or
Fantastic.
Australian Centre for Rural Entrepreneurship. They're partners of ours, and they do fabulous work. Or Community Enterprise in Scotland, who do amazing work, or the Social Enterprise Council of Canada. We can go on and on and on. If you're looking for tools, and this is be my shameless commercial, but if you're looking for tools, we can offer some support there. And we have one site we only offer free things, and so it's called socialshifters.co, and there are all kinds of worksheets, brief videos, opportunities to connect with other like-minded people. Now it's targeted at young people, absolutely. But if you're looking to find like-minded people who are trying to make change in the world, then that's where your gang lives, in that space. We have thousands of participants, members from all across the globe, and they're committed to a different world. If you're looking for more in-depth type suggestions, I would encourage people to go to see those partners that I mentioned. They're experts. They know an awful lot about this work, and they are committed to change and to helping people make change. If you're in Canada, you can check out, or for that matter, anywhere in the world, you can check out commongoodsolutions.ca. That's one of our sites, or socialenterpriseinstitute.ca, which is a online learning platform where you can purchase training content from experts from around the world.
We've got time for one more question, David.
Sure.
And that one leverages all of the experience that you've had over your career. If you knew when you were just starting out what you know now, what would you do differently?
I'd have taken my mother's advice and been a bartender. No, that's not it. No. Okay. No, I think that I would have been far more sure of what I believed as a young man if I knew that I was right, like I feel now as an old man. I think that I could have been far more effective had I not had internal doubts that I didn't know enough, that I felt like I wasn't prepared enough. Anybody who's happening to listening to this, if you believe you can solve a problem, it's the biggest part of being able to solve it. You can't make change by watching. And there is no room left for bystanders. You're either making a difference or you're part of the problem. It's the truth. So it doesn't have to be big things. You don't have to change the world. You don't have to change your country. You don't even have to change your city. You just have to change some small thing, whether it's bike lanes in your town or making sure. If we started to write a list of problems that people could solve, and we took them down to a small enough kind of level, it could fill a phone book. It could just I don't know how big the list would be. Just don't wait for permission to do something. Get out there and do something. Even if it's helping one person, do something.
Yeah, I love that. One of my favorite quotes actually is, the world is not changed by your opinion, it's changed by your action.
Right. And was it Joe Biden said that if you want to know what people think, don't listen to what they say, look at what they do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He said that before he was running for president. So, but
Well,
I think it's,
you may have made a lot of people temporarily happy in that bar, but you certainly wouldn't have changed their lives for the better like you have.
yeah. Well, thank you. That's really kind of you to say.
So, David, there's a social change competition coming up for our more youthful audience members. Can you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that?
Sure. The Social Enterprise World Forum is going to be in September. It's going to be a virtual World Forum. It's going to be in September. If you go to pretty soon, the stuff is not out yet, but it's going to be out here in the next week or so. But if you were to go to SEWF2021.org or socialshifters.co in the next couple of weeks, you should go to SEWF2021.org and register for the conference, just because it's going to be a fabulous collection of change makers from around the globe of all ages. But also, we're running a competition. We're going to run a Social Shifters Challenge as part of the World Forum. It's going to be a day for young people to come together, talk about the things that matter to them, and pitch for cash to help seed the changes that they're hoping to make in the world. So that if we can give them, and we're going to provide, as they get through that process, we're going to provide coaching, we're going to provide technical expertise, and it's going to be thousands of young people convening to talk about things that matter to them.
And so the young people, that's 18 to 30, is it?
18 to 30.
Fantastic. What an amazing opportunity. Thank you.
It will be a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah. And thanks so much for your time today too, David. I, for one, am heartened to see social and capital values coming together. And I know there will be a number of you watching right now with solutions to aid this alignment. But that's all we have time for today. I'll be back tomorrow with more nuggets of experience and real, honest discussions around how we can collectively produce more ethical and sustainable businesses. Until then, take care.
Thank you.